Thank you very much. Thanks to the Croatian Chamber of Architects for inviting us, and to you, Dubravko. Sorry we can't be there in person. We're in the middle of a 2-day teaching event, so we couldn't get away. And very briefly, we're going to split this presentation. Manos is going to start off and do roughly about half of it, and then I'm going to take over. And Manos has got 1 or 2 slides at the end, but we may join in and add comments to each other's presentations. So let's hope that works.
Thanks, Sarah. So I'll be driving the slides for both of us. So if there are glitches, it's my fault. So like this one, for example. Right, here we go. Let's see what happens there. I'll unshare and share again. Sorry about that.
Can you see us and hear us clearly? I assume that's a yes, as nobody is saying they can't.
Okay, let's assume they can hear us.
We hear you well and see the presentation. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
You can see both of us, can you?
Can you see both of us? Good.
Yes, we see both of you.
Excellent.
Excellent.
And we hear you well.
Wonderful. Okay, so very briefly, we'll have a section which is introductory section. We'll set out the background to what we'll be discussing. Effectively, we'll be discussing the professional service contracts, the RIBA service contracts. As you can see there, from that statistic, which is taken from a recent RIBA construction contracts and law report, literally came out about a month ago. It is becoming the most popular professional service contract. A professional service contract in this case is one between client and architect or another consultant, but in our case, it will be the architect as we're discussing architecture. We'll outline the range of RIBA standard forms within this family of contracts. And then we'll examine how the provisions deal with scope of services and, more importantly, changes and methods of charging fees, and equally importantly, adjustments. So I'll start off with literally a handful of slides relating to background before we hit the professional service contracts. Just a matter of clarify, the slides, top right-hand corner will show an image or two of the documents that we'll be discussing. So, for example, the very top right-hand corner is discussing the statistic that came out of the RIBA construction contract law report. Okay, so a good place to start is, of course, the code that is related to the RIBA, the Architects Registration Board, and there is a similar one by the RIBA if you were to be a member of the RIBA. Both codes list requirements for professional services contracts. In reality, they don't mention professional service contract, they talk about written agreements, same thing. So if you have a written agreement with the client, and you must have a written agreement with the client, then you need to allow for certain things to be within that agreement. And I won't go through all that list, which is highlighted there. However, the things to flag up is that aside from the contracting parties, the other important things is the scope of the work. In other words, the services. And what you'll get for that, the fees that you are charging for that, and method of calculating it, or indeed all the method of calculating it. Okay, so that comes straight out of the RIBA code. And there is a similar one in the RIBA code of 2019. If you were interested, it's principle 2.1. Okay, so similar thing. In other words, they both require architects to do the right thing, which is to list out scope of services and fees. Why do we need to do that? The main reason is because whilst we have statutory protection of title, there is none for function. Therefore, the function, in other words, the services that we provide, is not statutory listed anywhere. Okay, in other words, there that architects can do, but others cannot. Okay, so therefore, there is a requirement for the services to be listed out. Furthermore, in terms of fees, longer than other days that we have had mandatory fees that went out 1980s, early 1980s, the mandatory fees. Even the recommended fees disappeared by 2019. So no more standard fees, no more agreed rates. So function and fees need to be detailed in the appointment. Nothing can be assumed as standard. It's as simple as that. Okay, and I'm sure everybody else has similar things to talk about when you do your presentations. The other aspect that we'd like to, which is the last of the background slides, is the regulatory framework. The terms agreed in the professional service contract are constrained by the regulatory framework. In other words, the laws and regulations. There are a number of pieces of legislation that control what must and what cannot be included in contracts. And there are some statutory roles that construction consultants may take on. Okay, so whilst the function is not controlled in any way, there are statutory roles within legislation that allows for specific functions to be taken on by construction consultants. Now, construction consultants may include architects, but it could be anyone within the construction field. The legislation must be taken into account when agreed terms of the professional service contracts. Now, the table shows some key legislation. We won't go into it in detail, but the effect largely depends on client status. In other words, whether you're public sector, private commercial, or consumer domestic. For example, I'll give you one example why we split them into different types. The first row is to do with an important act which deals with methods of payments, how payments are dealt with in terms of time, what you can do in terms of pay less notices, and also dispute resolution in the form of statutory adjudication in any construction contract, irrespective of whether it's a professional service contract or a building contract. Now, in this case, for example, public sector clients which have contract, the contractor needs to account for what is required under the Act. However, the Act does not apply to residential occupiers. So different acts bear differently on different clients. The only other aspect that I will touch on within this table is the last one, which is highlighted in yellow. The construction design management regulations is a health and safety legislation, which deals with managing or designing out risk. Okay, and there is a statutory role under that. There are two, but one that relates directly to us. The statutory role of principal designer. That is enshrined in the Act, in the regulations rather, sorry, and can be assumed by any competent professional. It is often suggested the architect is more likely to be the right person to do it. And from that point of view, there is an appointment related to that. So having done the background, we'll go very quickly into the RIBA professional services contracts. Now, unlike other professional service contracts, let's say the NEC, which has one, and then you amend through Z clauses what you want to do, the RIBA professional service contracts have a suite of different contracts for different situations. For example, there is the standard one and a concise one, a slightly more concise, basically, a domestic one, specifically for domestic clients. A subconsultant, it could be either a subconsultant to somebody else, or you may have a subconsultant. The principal designer that I just mentioned, in other words, the health and safety role of principal designer, it will have a separate one. And then very quickly down the list, specialist ones, such as for interior design and conservation architects. these will have different things. For example, the interior design one will also provide not only services, but goods, for example. Okay, so there are different things that are required for different roles and functions. So the next one is to look at the structure of the RIBA service contracts. All of the professional service contracts have a common structure. There's a guidance notes, lets you know how to fill the document, contract checklist, just to check that you've done the right thing, and then the important things, the agreement between the two parties, the contract details, the contract conditions, and the schedule of services. The contract conditions, in other words, the terms, are fixed, and many are the same across the whole of the suite. Okay, so they're almost identical, whether it's a domestic one, a concise, a standard, etc. The contract details and schedule of services, itemized in blue there, are project specific and entered by the users, by the two parties, or by the party and then agreed with the other party. Okay, top hand right corner is just an image of the standard one. This is the example of the standard one. Okay, so we've done this structure, we've gone through the family, and now we look at the services, fees, and that will be done by Sarah.
Okay, services. The services are all set out in sections at the back of all of these documents, and they work on the principle that there are groups of services listed out, and a menu, as it were, of things that you could do, but that any one that you do decide to do, it has to be selected. There's nothing fixed. So we see in the first slide, the services are grouped by work stage. That happens in all of the appointments. And we've highlighted work stage 3 there in the RIBA plan of work. And that image just shows the list of potential services at stage 3. The menu is different for each version of the that Manos had up earlier, so it's a different list from which to choose, but there are some which are common across many of the different versions because they're the kind of services that are needed on all projects. Okay. The next slide shows that, in fact, with one of the professional service contracts only, there's a further subgrouping. This is the standard professional services contract, which is effectively the largest of all of them. And this grouping is to do with defined roles, which there are 4: architect, consultant, lead designer, project lead, contract administrator. It's just a convenient way of further detailing out and grouping the services. The architect could do any of these roles or just one of them. And for each of them, whatever version you're using and whichever clustering of services you're using, there is an opportunity, which you can probably see just there, some blank lines, for the parties to insert other services which they wish to add, which are not included above. This is all done, or can all be done digitally, so that you're ticking these digitally and typing them in, and you end up with what looks like a printed, finalized document. Also, at the very end of all of this schedule, there is another space where you can add additional services or other services which don't apply to any particular work stage. Because there could be things that you do which are not necessarily anchored in stage 3 or 4. Here it gives, again, a menu of suggestions as to what those could be, which is quite helpful. But it's also helpful in the sense that it is another way of underlining to the client that these things are not part of the normal services of an architect. And the sorts of things that are listed there, and we've put a couple of examples like assessment of alternative designs by the contractor or services in connection with a dispute. There are also things like negotiating with a freeholder. None of those things would be part of the normal ones unless you actually select them and insert them there. Now, all of that together is, it's very precise and very detailed. and it is one way of trying to control the extent of the work that you are going to end up doing for the fee. So it's quite important that they're defined very carefully. Now we're going to have a look at the fees. A starting point again is the code, and the code gives a little bit of support because it does state that architects should not undertake any work unless they are adequately resourced. They have to resource the services that they're providing, and that is something of a help in stopping from firms of registered architects from undercutting each other drastically, because if they're not properly resourced, that would be a breach of the code. And there is also a little bit of support in other areas in terms of not getting to rock bottom fees. These days in public procurement, public bodies have to consider things other than just the lowest price. One thing that they have to consider is social value. So projects that are above I think it's a threshold of £100,000, they do not, they have to wait the assessment of bids, but they have to allow a weighting of 10% for social value. Well, that kind of thing is quite useful in stopping the fees dropping to rock bottom levels. How it's set out in the appointment, again, it's very precisely defined. You have a starting point in that it's all of the versions of the contract require the parties to identify a project brief, a construction cost, and a project program. That could be by referring to another document or describing it within the appointment itself, but this has to be spelled out. And this is an important starting point, because if there are changes to these, then this could be a reason for adjusting the fee. So these are defined and inserted. The basic fee can then be charged on a wide range of different methods. You set out how you're going to do it. It could be percentage of construction cost. It could be according to a lump sum. It could be on a time charge basis. It could be design cost per square meter, or any other agreed method that you want to put in. Plus, it could be different for different work stages. It could be different for different services. And it often is. In practice, people often agree, for example, a lump sum for one work stage, an early work stage, and then maybe a time charge for some other aspects. There isn't much, the previous speaker referred to what I think we would call open book accounting, where the client actually sees your internal accounting system and how you are costing things. There isn't a great deal of that, but it might arise on some public projects. It's not really referenced in the standard forms of appointment. On private commercial projects, it probably wouldn't happen very often, although it's growing. So there's a tendency to move towards that. A very useful aspect is that the RIBA professional services contracts all have some specific things listed, numbers of meetings per work stage and numbers of site inspections per work stage. And you set out exactly what those are going to be. And you state whether that number is included in the basic fee or it's going to be done for an additional fee. And in any event, if you end up having to go on site more often than what's been set here, the contract makes it clear that that will be charged additionally on a time charge basis, which is extremely useful. For example, you have a client that wants to meet you, every day to go through things. You would have set out what the limits of that would be before the project begins. I think there are a couple of slides now, 2 or 3 slides, which show how that fee might change. So the previous two showed what you agree in the first place. These ones show how it might be adjusted. And there are quite a number of reasons. In fact, these clauses are quite detailed and take up quite a bit of the terms in the contract. There are quite a number of reasons why they might change. One straightforward one is that lump sums are revised every 12 months according to a consumer price index. then the basic fee is adjusted if material changes are made to the project brief, construction cost, or project program. So that highlights the importance of identifying what those are right at the beginning. And more recently, they have introduced clauses to deal with the idea of deflation or cuts, so that if the fee is percentage-based, the fee is adjusted to compensate for any reduction in the construction cost due to deflation. And also, if the project, the construction cost, or if there's any reduction by the client or due to deflation, any adjustment only applies from the point that happens. So there is you don't have to repay any fees that you've been charging up to that point. The reduction is just one that's going forward. And finally, I think on fees, this is shows that there are other reasons why it might change. And essentially, these clauses say that fees might be due if the services change due to reasons beyond the architect's control. And it gives quite a long list of what those might be. The kinds of things that there might be are to do with changes. For example, if the project changes so that substantial parts of the design are not completed, or there are delays to the services, but also if the architect has to provide a new design after the client has approved a design. And that can often be a bone of contention and is quite useful. So once they've signed off a design, as soon as you're asked to revisit it, that is grounds for additional fees. And now I think Manos is going to have a look at some sources of information about fees.
Yeah, we're just going to look at two types of sources. One is benchmarking, the other one is fee calculation. In a sense, we introduce them here just to flag up one thing, which is that most practices will have some sort of method of calculating what the next project should bring in. Okay, so it might be based on timesheets based on other projects, therefore it's a resource-based calculation against profit, etc. So there are a couple of companies that produce reports. First, the RIBA. After all, it is a company. It produces the business benchmarking report. For chartered practices, this is distinct from chartered members. In other words, those practices that have chosen to join as chartered practices, then they get the full report. So what you get is something which is fairly detailed, gives you a business benchmarking. You can benchmark your practice against others. A summary is available for all. So this, for example, the snapshot on the right-hand side in sort of a greenish color is from the summary, just for example, and taken out of that, zoomed in, it's the kind of thing that you'll get. You'll get things like some across the board in different types of size of practices, the type of salaries that you would get on average in relation to those that work at different levels within the practice. So that might then translate into a time cost, a time-based resource for your own practice. If you are starting up, that might be a useful way of bouncing against others. The Fee Bureau does the same thing, by the way, and also can do graphs. It's all by subscription. You pay a subscription, you ask a question, it produces the answer. For example, it might ask a question such as, what is the cumulative percentage of fee by work stage? So the work stages will give you how much you could charge against that. That's irrespective of what your fee will be. In other words, this is the percentage of fee by work stage, okay? That assumes all sorts of things. It could be completely different if you were doing a conservation project to a new build. So these are very much geared to the subscriber. So the last slide almost, is the fee calculators. This is fairly new. Okay, so the RIBA fee calculator, which again is only for the RIBA chart members, only came out last year. And the Fee Bureau does the same thing with subscription. The far right one is the version by the Fee Bureau. The one that has a snapshot of a worked out method is by the RIBA. You just go through work stages, you set up your resources, you work out your resources, your expenditure, your profit, your risk, etc. You produce a figure, and then you can include it digitally included within the RIBA contracts. So that's fairly useful. Okay, so these are the methods, feed data sources that we wanted to flag up for you. And the last one is further reading. Aside from our little books, which are coming, well, the first one's not going to be little, unfortunately. It's looking at a whole range of professional service contracts, much like we did with the building contracts, which that one was about 400 odd pages. This one will not be as. The second one is a very interesting article by Sarah, a good summary of what you would expect to find in the RIBA professional service contracts. Admittedly, there was the 2018 versions, but they haven't changed that much. The last two are very interesting. The RIBA Construction Contracts Law Report has information on all sorts of things to do with statistical information, such as the number of practices that use particular professional service contracts, or indeed the procurement routes. The last one there is the latest offering by government on their construction strategy. And you might find that useful. We talked about social value. It will be also included there. Okay, so that brings us to close. And we thank you if you were listening.
Thank you, Sarah and Manos. Thank you for the very interesting presentation. Well, let's see if I do have a question or two, but let's see if there are questions from audience or maybe the chat. Robert is not here. Okay. I wanted to ask you. I mean,
chat.
Sorry.
We can't see anything in chat now.
Yeah, I cannot see it as well. So.
We can see chat. I mean, we can see the chat.
For the purpose of chatting, there are no questions at the moment.
Yeah, okay.
But I wanted to ask you basically regarding your last slides when you spoke about benchmarking and collecting data. Okay, the information is available upon subscription, but how does RIBA and the other one was Fee Bureau? How do they collect these? Is it voluntarily?
Yeah, absolutely.
Do you voluntary to give your information, or?
Yeah. So what happens is the RIBA. Well, let's put it in context. The RIBA had a company, a lucrative company called the National Building Specification, the NBS. Okay, it did all the specification writing. The NBS used to do this every 5 years. The RIBA sold the NBS because the RIBA has not much money, and it's taken on the role of doing these reports. So every 5 years, it sends out a questionnaire to architects, clients, contractors, and collects information. It's entirely voluntary. Fee Bureau does similar things.
Mm-hmm. It's a fairly wide survey, but not necessarily foolproof in terms of being.
We found, as you know, we've mentioned it to you before that we do our own surveys, doing a lot of teaching right across the board of a number of schools of architecture, and the numbers that we accumulate is quite substantial, and the numbers are not dissimilar to the latest RIBA construction law report.
Yeah, they're pretty consistent with that.
Because I mean, we usually have. I don't know about other countries. Maybe we can hear from other lecturers today and tomorrow. I mean, usually we have a really bad experience with collecting such kind of data in Croatia, but also, I mean, given the experience in the Our Architects Council of Europe, or one set of the questions is basically dedicated to earnings and fees and so on. So the response rate is relatively low in a way. And then
The response rate will be right low. Yeah, we agree with you. That's why we do the ones that we do at school, because at schools, because we've got captive audience there, and they do answer. So, for example, in our latest one, we have very similar statistics to the bespoke one. Do you remember? If I very quickly share, if you don't mind, I'll share that. If I go very, very quickly to the first page, I apologize for doing this. So the first page, if I can find the first page, we're almost there, people. Right. Okay, so that 40% of bespoke, in other words, non-standard professional service contracts, is what we find. Okay. We don't find, admittedly, 43% of the RIBA professional service contract. We find them about less than that. Okay.
Yeah.
However, it's because the RIBA sends it to RIBA members.
Yeah.
Okay.
So you have to remember that
So
they're not. There
yeah.
are lots of registered architects
Who are not
RIBA members, quite a large number, and they will not have filled in the questionnaire.
We still find it as the most popular of the standard form professional service contracts.
Yes.
But not necessarily over and above the bespoke ones. In fact, we are concerned that the bespoke ones are greater than the standard ones. And I think we mentioned this before to you, if you were bouncing it against the building contracts, the bespoke is much less. Only about 15% is bespoke as against standard.
Yeah.
Now, what does it matter? It matters because then you know what you're getting in relation to the written contract.
Thank you. And Sarah, I was also going to ask you about when I really like the fact that when you were explaining the methods of calculation, that they are basically all there still, regardless of the fee scales, based on the percentage of the construction cost, time rates, and so it's still there in a way. What is this discouraging, at least from let's say smaller countries or relatively recent professional associations recently established? You know, the amount of work and support and the manuals and RIBA guidelines, and also when Axel was speaking from Switzerland, you know, the numerous standards that are available in a way to the membership, which in smaller countries, and then we were associations with shorter tradition or constant breaks, is basically very hard to achieve. I don't know if there are some questions from the audience here. No? Okay. Okay, Marko. Yeah. Inflacija.
Na neki način indeks bio euro, zapravo taj indeks više nemamo i on uopće nije mjerodavan, a istovremeno imamo značajnu inflaciju kao svuda oko. Taj indeks razvoja je poznat s drugim industrijama, ali od nas slabo korišten i zapravo treba da nekako podržati cijele.
It's the question from the audience, Sarah, was basically, I think you were explaining this at one of the slides, that the mechanisms for protecting the change, the safeguarding or enabling the flexibility of change of the price, especially now. The inflation, yeah, especially now regarding the inflation rate, and so what is the development index and these? So I don't know which slide it was. Around 8 to 10.
I'll put it up.
So you know the colleagues are saying that, you know, for us the protection from the inflation in a way was euro.
This is deflation.
Yeah. Okay. So. Exactly. So the lump sum revisions every 12 months, and especially now in these circumstances of the inflation rates and given the fact that project span is a long one, right? Negotiate a project now and it goes for 3 years or who knows what happens along the way,
Yes, exactly. It's a bit of protection against. I mean, when it was drafted, it wouldn't have been such a problem, but it's really nice to see it there now because of what's going on. And we might find that people are discussing that quite a lot over the next year or two. It's an important protection.
We have a similar situation in building contracts, by the way. In fluctuations, we have fluctuations in building contracts. It has become interested. So people have suddenly realized that the risk is too great. So there's fluctuation clauses in building contracts.
Okay, thank you. So, it's a short break now. 15 minutes.
One last comment. These digital contracts, you can view them online. Anyone can view them after they go to the RIBA website. Okay, so they can download them and view them.
They make all of them available as a watermarked copy, so you can't use it, but you can reference it.
There is a lot of material available, basically, for people. It is a little bit different legal system and traditions and everything, but I mean, there is a lot of to be actually downloaded and seen free of charge from the RIBA's website. Yes, I know, and maybe this is a good opportunity to remind our audience if they have interest in particular topics as well. Okay.
Thank you for inviting us.
Thank you very much. If you have time, please do join us maybe tomorrow or for the discussion. We'll see you. Okay. No, I see.
It's a workshop day all day tomorrow.
Okay.
Sorry about
that. Thank you very much.
Have a lovely time.
Thanks. Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Just one last thing. I assume that we'll be able to see the presentations, or you're publishing something we can have a look at, because we would love to see what everyone else has said.
Yes, don't worry. The presentations will be a little bit edited and shortened and then published at the chambers. Without the intervals, not the presentations themselves, and published at the chambers YouTube channel in due time. And I'll send you links. Don't worry. Thank you very much.
Take care.
Thanks.
Thank you. Bye.